Honorable mentions.
Alright, so these are matches that didn't make the list but deserve to be mentioned. First off, Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair, the first ever black female main event at a WrestleMania. This meant so much to me as someone of color to see two black females, because one of those two could already be a big deal. Two black people main eventing a WrestleMania is a big deal. Two black women is even bigger. Hell, you can even say two women. And yes, it's on night one, still a main event. I'll take it. Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant, the very first blockbuster main event to happen at a WrestleMania. Sold out a stadium, big time main event, deserves a mention. Also from that same event, WrestleMania 3, Randy Savage versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. People are calling that the first true classic from a WrestleMania. I mean, it's Randy Savage and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. You can't go wrong with those two. Hulk Hogan versus Randy Savage. The mega powers collide. Brother, brother, brother. Love everything about it. You can't go wrong with it. Hogan versus Ultimate Warrior happened during the year I was born. The Ultimate Challenge, as said by Ultimate Warrior. Warrior doesn't get enough love. Too many people shit on the Ultimate Warrior and his in-ring ability. He really wasn't that bad. For his time, far better than he had every right to be. Bret Hart versus Owen Hart, perhaps the greatest opener to ever take place at a WrestleMania. Both of these men had an excellent bout, an excellent feud that doesn't get talked about enough and deserves to be talked about. Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon and the first ever ladder match. Everyone still goes back and watches it. It still holds up. One of the best ladder matches to happen at WrestleMania for sure. The Iron Man match, Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels. Look, I appreciate the significance of this match. I understand how important it is to WrestleMania. I kind of think it's a tad bit overrated. I think it's an awesome match, but once you watch it once, I don't really think there's a need to go back and rewatch the Iron Man portion of the match. If I go back and watch it, I'm watching the sudden death portion where Shawn beats Bret Hart and the boyhood dream comes true. Still an awesome match, but ultimately not rewatchable all that much. Kane versus Undertaker. Kane had the debut of a lifetime. Taker wouldn't fight his brother like Bret wouldn't fight Owen. And then ultimately, he ended up fighting him at WrestleMania 14. The match was a classic. Chris Jericho, Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania 19. If I was gonna put any WrestleMania 19 match on here, it would be that. That would have been the match that made it. It didn't quite make it, but by far one of the best matches for either one of those two. You can't not talk about Kurt Angle versus Brock. Although Brock botched his shooting star press, which really sucked. If he had hit that, we would be singing the high praises out of it, but he didn't, even with the botch. Something people should definitely go watch. The retirement match for the Nature Boy, Ric Flair, WrestleMania 24, the infamous, I'm sorry, I love you, super kick. What a way to go out. I just hate that it was ruined because Ric Flair couldn't just stay retired. It was the perfect send-off, and he had to ruin it. Randy Orton versus Taker, WrestleMania 21. I still remember that infamous RKO counter. That man can hit an RKO out of nowhere, literally. It's amazing. End of an era. Triple H versus Undertaker with Shawn Michaels as the special guest referee. The culmination of 4 years of WrestleMania, 25, 26, 27, and now 28 is when the match happened. Definitely a match to remember. Ronda Rousey and Kurt Angle versus Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. What might be the best celebrity match the WWE has ever done. I know Bad Bunny had a great performance, and many others too. Ronda came in, and she was a house of fire. Everyone was blown away by her performance. Bryan versus Triple H, WrestleMania 30. You can't have the all-time classic match without this match. This helped set up one of the greatest moments at a WrestleMania. So you gotta talk about it. The match was awesome too. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about Kofi Mania. Kofi Kingston beating Bryan Danielson. All-time classic moment. An excellent match. Didn't quite make the list. If it was going to make the list, it would have been number 10, but there's a match that's better. So, without further ado, here's my top 10 greatest WrestleMania matches of all time, starting with number 10.
Number 10. Daniel Bryan versus Randy Orton versus Batista at WrestleMania 30.
Man, Bryan Danielson, aka Daniel Bryan, Batista, Randy Orton, the main event of WrestleMania 30. A match that many wrestlers today were inspired by. As a fan of Daniel Bryan, someone who followed him since Ring of Honor, someone who has seen his struggle, seen him climb, wrestling in front of 30 people in a gym, literally at a gym, to now main eventing thousands at a stadium. It's one of those things, as a wrestling fan, it fulfills you because you get to see these young talent grow. And for the longest time, since I started doing YouTube, I've been the biggest Daniel Bryan fan, almost to a point where I got heat for it. So to see him fulfill his journey, fulfill everything that he set out to do, because at first, he was never supposed to be in this match. Remember that. It was gonna be Batista versus Randy Orton. That was the plan. It sounds really dumb, and it is. Even Batista himself said it was stupid. Literally everyone else knew that Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan, was the one people wanted to see. Ever since he beat John Cena at SummerSlam, that was the guy. That was the guy. And for some reason, with this authority storyline, they did not want to make him the focal point. By them, I mean Vince McMahon and the higher-ups. Even though they heard the fans, literally hijacking the shows. We want Daniel Bryan. They were gonna go with Batista and Randy Orton. It got so bad they kept him out of the Royal Rumble. However, the fans would not settle for it. Every night, yes chance. Every chance they got, Daniel Bryan chance. They could not do anything without hearing Daniel Bryan. Also, CM Punk leaving helps. But they forced the hands of WWE to put Bryan in the main event, and we got one of the greatest matches of all time as a result. I think Randy Orton gets a lot of flack for half-assing his matches for good reason. This is one of those matches where you could tell he was in it. He felt it because he knew he was creating something special. So every move, all the small things that he's known for doing, you had it. His selling, the little moments where he stops, you can just see the wheels turning in his head. Such an amazing thing to see Randy Orton at his best, because when he's at his best, he's one of the best. And then Batista doing the honors for Bryan Danielson, to me, is the epitome of why I think he's one of the all-time greats. He's a man that's selfless. All he cares about is producing the best stories possible. He could have came in, pulled politics, got him the championship win. No. He heard the fans. He knew they were behind Bryan, and he went in and put him over. You don't get that type of selflessness a lot in wrestling. What we got was one of the greatest moments where Bryan is seen yesing with both titles and the crowd's going crazy. It's one of those things that make you go, this is why I'm a wrestling fan. It's legendary. You can never, ever take this away from him. So you had an all-time classic match with an all-time classic moment. And believe it or not, it's only number 10 on my list. There are other matches that are better. So let's go ahead and get to number 9.
Number 9, Edge versus Mick Foley at WrestleMania 22.
All right, Edge versus the hardcore legend Mick Foley. All-time classic. The best hardcore match at a WrestleMania. But it's crazy. As much as I love this match, it also kind of bothers me that Edge was not in the main event this year. During this time in 2006, he was over like Rover. Nuclear heat with him and Lita. Live sex celebrations, them doing what they do. They couldn't go nowhere without people wanting to strangle them. He had that much heat on him. And someone that hot, you put in the main event. And yes, I understand Triple H and John Cena, first time ever. I'm not gonna hate on that, but why was Edge not in the main event this year? It made no sense to me at all. Especially seeing this match. This match between him and Mick Foley was the best thing on this show. Nothing came close to topping it. Nothing. He literally shoved it right back in their faces. They regretted not putting Edge in the main event. When you look at this match, all the stuff that they did, the barbed wire spots, Edge spearing Mick Foley, he had barbed wire around his waist, that cut him up, all the blood. Lita got some blood on her as well. Respect to Lita. Lita's one of the very few females to go in there and do everything right. She was really, really good as this heel valet that just would not stop getting involved. But it really helped this match, because there was a spot in this match where Mick Foley had his sacco wrapped around and barbed wire, and we saw him give it to Edge, and then he gave it to Lita. It was bonkers. I don't think we'll ever see a violent match like this ever again in WWE. And it had everything. Barbed wire, thumbtacks, and the best thing you could ever do in this match was that ending. The flaming table where Edge spears Mick Foley off the apron and they both go through it. That moment, iconic. Not just because of Joey Styles going, oh my God, but when is the next time you will ever see something like that? Exactly. You're never going to see a spot like that anywhere. That is dangerous, man. That will always live on in my mind as an all-time moment at WrestleMania. Mick Foley calls it the greatest hardcore match at a WrestleMania. It is. I dare you to find me a better hardcore match. Good luck finding me better matches than the ones already on this list. All-time classic, one of the greatest of all time. A match that once and for all proves that Edge should have been the main event of WrestleMania 22. But I digress, then the breaks. Let's move on to number 8.
Number 8. The Rock vs. Hollywood Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 18.
You know, sometimes I think we as fans lose sight of exactly why we watch wrestling. Because in this world of Dave Meltzer star ratings, in this world of high spots, in this world of everyone's gotta have the best match on the card, right? We forget that at the end of the day, the whole purpose of what these wrestlers do is to go out there and make these people feel like they're getting their money's worth. Period. When you watch Hollywood Hulk Hogan versus The Rock, you see them come face to face and not even touch. And that crowd in Toronto is going absolutely bonkers. They just go crazy. And that energy, it continues constantly throughout the entire match. The moment Hogan gives Rock that Beal, The Rock goes flying, and Hogan does the flexing, brother. It stays at that level of energy throughout. It's not all cheers, a lot of it booing, because the fans do turn on The Rock, but still, it's incredible when you look at the crowd reaction. In my opinion, this match had the best crowd reaction ever for a WrestleMania match. There hasn't been a reaction like this since, quite frankly. And why would there be? Hulk Hogan and The Rock are two of the greatest of all time. And what I respect about this match, The Rock knew the fans were going to get behind Hogan. So instead of going against the grain, he called an audible and played the heel. And damn it, it made the match even better. He was supposed to be the face. They did everything possible to make Hogan the heel. I think they had NWO put Rock in an ambulance and then run over the ambulance. They tried to kill Rock, and the fans still booed him. But The Rock said, you know what? I want you to boo me. Let's make this match fun. And he did. And ultimately, it ended up being one of the greatest of all time. Seeing Hulk Hogan Hulk up. I know people hate it. I don't give a damn. It's fun. And then him hitting the leg drop, and you hear Jim Ross go, he beat Andre the Giant with that leg drop. And then The Rock kick out. Oh, man. But ultimately, The Rock wins with the people's elbow. They shake hands, they raise the arm. There was absolutely no way they can go back to him being in the NWO. They had to bring back the red and yellow. The very next night on Raw, the crowd would not shut up for him. Nothing they could have done to stop this momentum for Hogan. And rightfully so, turned him back to red and yellow, gave him the championship. He was gone from WWE, WWF at the time. For how long? It had to have been a decade or so, right? Because he left in 1992. 1992, 1993, around that time, yeah. A decade. And the fans never forgot him. The fans never forgot him. You can't have a top 10 without Hogan and Rock. At least on my list. We still got more to go.
Number 7. TLC 2. Edge and Christian versus the Hardys versus the Dudleys at WrestleMania 17.
Yeah, this match might have set the bar a little too high for tag team wrestling. And if you ask any of the six, whether it be Bubba, Devon, Edge, Christian, Matt, or Jeff, you might even ask Spike, Lita, or Rhino, they will all tell you this match set the bar too high. Even to this day, no ladder match, no tag team ladder match ever has come close to topping it. The stuff they did in this match is insane, inhumane. And I'm not just talking about the chair shots to the face or the ladders to the face. We saw Jeff Hardy hanging from the titles, getting speared off the titles, hanging above. Who do you know would be paid enough money to do that? Even if you paid them millions, I wouldn't want to do that. You have to be out of your mind to do any of the stuff they did in this match. And we had it all. Jeff jumping off the top of the ladder, the concertos, the 3Ds through tables. Oh my God, it was the greatest hits. It was a concert for tag team wrestling. These three teams, Dudley's, Edge and Christian, Hardys, revolutionized tag team wrestling. They made people look at tag team wrestling as if it was the main event. I truly believe when it's all said and done, these three teams, at least the Hardys, Dudleys, and Edge and Christian, are going down as one of the greatest tag teams ever. Not just in WWE, but of all time. The TLC match, the first one at SummerSlam 2000, another classic, but this is the best one in my opinion. This one was bonkers. It was just bonkers, balls to the walls. Every moment. Spike Dudley, Lita, Rhino, all of them had a play in this match. But the winner, it doesn't even matter. Edge and Christian retain the titles, but I feel like ultimately, we're gonna remember this match, even to this day. Because this happened in 2001, right? It's been 22 years, and we're still talking about it. You're never gonna forget about this match. It's one of the greatest, rightfully so. So that's number 7 for me. We still got more. It's gonna be hard to top it, but we did. Let's move on to number 6.
Number 6. Macho Man Randy Savage versus The Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 7.
I know Warrior has a bad reputation outside the ring. We're not gonna get into that. Y'all have your opinions on the man, Jim Hellwig, all you want. You cannot take away from the impact that he has had on wrestling. At one point in time, you could argue he was just as hot as Hulk Hogan in his prime. He was the man. And I go to this match. This match with Macho Man Randy Savage. Oh yeah, dig it! Another classic wrestler. Someone that doesn't get nearly enough love. Not just from fans, but WWE, period. These two went in there. They had a match that was career versus career. Whoever lost this match had to retire. Now, we all know that didn't end up happening for either one of them, but it was still a big match. You had Randy Savage come out in the white, which is one of my favorite attire from Randy Savage. But then Ultimate Warrior, you know, when his bell rings, he's high octane, he's running to the ring. He wasn't running. He walked. He walked to the ring. You're like, whoa! Totally different feel. And it told an interesting story, because it made you think he's taking this really seriously. And that exact same feeling was maintained throughout the match. You had both men selling their asses off, doing these crazy spots. I think Randy Savage hit the elbow drop multiple times. He wanted this to be his last match, so he just went ahead and just killed the significance of the finisher, not thinking that next year he was gonna be world champion. And Ultimate Warrior kicked out. And I love that when Warrior first hit his finisher, you see him doubting himself, looking at his hands, looking at the power of the Ultimate, and walk away, and then come back and just completely destroy Randy Savage. Now, the match itself, all-time classic. What takes this to the next level is what happened afterwards. We see, oh, bless her heart, rest in peace, Sensational Sherry. We will never have another one like her. I love me some Sensational Sherry, I just do. We see her come out belittling, demeaning Randy Savage, and then she starts kicking his ass. Miss Elizabeth was in the audience, front row. And by this point, Randy Savage and Elizabeth were broken up, not in real life, but they were actually broken up on screen. And they had been for a while since the Mega Powers exploded, brother. But to see this moment where Elizabeth comes into the ring, takes down Sensational Sherry, and then Randy Savage and Elizabeth reunite. There were grown men in the crowd crying, openly weeping. It's one of those moments that will live on in the echelons of wrestling history. The sight of Randy Savage carrying Elizabeth on his shoulder. At the end of the day, man, that's what it's all about. Moments like that is why these guys spend 300 days a year on the road, sacrificing their bodies for entertainment. There will never, ever be a moment like this. And it's because of the story they told with Randy Savage and Elizabeth. It's hard to imagine there being a better match, a better moment than this, but we got a couple more. So that's number 6. Let's move on to number 5.
Number 5. Chris Benoit versus Shawn Michaels versus Triple H at WrestleMania 20.
Alright, let's just clear the air right now. Anyone that has an issue with how Chris Benoit ended his life, double homicide, suicide, you have every right to despise this man. However, as someone who loves wrestling, as someone that has followed Chris Benoit since his days in WCW, I cannot, in good faith, make this list without putting the absolute greatest triple threat match of all time on it. And it involves 3 of the best wrestlers to ever do it, man. Say what you want about Chris Benoit, he might still be, but was the best technical wrestler of his time. And you put him in the ring with Shawn Michaels and Triple H, 2 of the greatest of all time. For the longest time up to this point, people were begging for WWE to give that title to Chris Benoit. It's been over a year. Because I remember his match with Kurt Angle the previous year in 2003, where they had that instant classic. Now, if I ever do a top 10 WWE list, that will be on there. Ever since that match, fans were begging WWE to give him a title run. Took him a year, but he won the Rumble, starting at number 1, got this match against Shawn Michaels and Triple H, and they were embroiled in their feud that was, what, 2 years at this point? It was going on for a long, long time, since Shawn Michaels returned. So it was an ongoing feud that's been simmering, and this was a culmination of all that here at WrestleMania 20. The stuff they did here, the on and off teamwork and then dissension between Shawn Michaels and Triple H really spoke to their history. That added to the match. But it was Chris Benoit's story. It was a match to make Chris Benoit the man, and they went all in with him. He tapped out Triple H after he was in that crippler crossface for like, what, 10 minutes? He was in that thing for a long time. Him and Shawn Michaels liked being in submission holds for ridiculously long times. And I love that in the crippler crossface, Triple H passed out and then woke back up to tap out. That was ridiculous, but I love it. What happened afterwards was special. So Chris Benoit wins the match. And then we see Eddie Guerrero come out. God, that's sad. We lost both of them, man. And we know that was a huge moment for them. We saw them both holding the championships high in the air. WWE said, these are our guys, Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit. Now, ultimately, it didn't end up staying that way because ratings would dictate that those two weren't the best. But Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit, good luck finding better wrestlers than those two. It's not a lot. It's not a big list. And they both had this moment. It's just sad to me that not even, what, 2 years later, we would lose Eddie. And then the year afterwards, we lost Chris. And it's hard going back and looking at this moment because of how Chris ended his life. I know a lot of people just can't even watch this match again. And I'm sure I pissed off a lot more by putting it in my top 10, but you can't have a top 10 without this triple threat match. You know you can't. This moment with Eddie and Chris, everything about this match, it personifies WrestleMania. I think it would be an even bigger disrespect to what all of these wrestlers have done if we didn't talk about it. You'll never see Triple H or Shawn Michaels mention it. Okay, they won't mention it on camera. They'll probably mention it behind scenes, blah, 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 blah. You cannot have a top 10 greatest matches of all time for WrestleMania list without this triple threat match. Period. So that's my number 5. But we move on to number 4.
Number 4. The Rock vs. Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 17.
If you ask me right now, name your top 5. Stone Cold Steve Austin, Hulk Hogan, Undertaker, The Rock. And that 5th one could change between Ric Flair or Shawn Michaels. I might go Shawn Michaels on that one. But The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin, during this period, their popularity was so high. They were so over. It transcended wrestling. Everyone knew who they were, which is why so many call this the best main event. When you really think about it, the hype for this match, I still go back and watch the hype package. Limp Bizkit, right? Limp Bizkit, My Way or the Highway, My Way or the Highway. The perfect main event. And oh my God, the match. What an amazing match. We'll talk about the ending later. You can't tell me that match wasn't awesome. It might be, in my personal opinion, might be the best match that Rock and Austin ever had. As one-on-ones go, there are other matches, tag teams, and of course the Survivor Series match, which was also a classic. But still, it doesn't get any better than this. This crowd was hot for Austin. Pro Austin. Then you had The Rock come out, and then they tore each other up. Not a single second was boring. And you see the storytelling of Austin getting more and more and more desperate. So desperate that he got the help of Vince McMahon. Here we go. All right, let's get to it. If it was up to me, I would have changed that ending. I would have had Austin stun Vince McMahon. You would have still gotten him across as a desperate champion. He could have still been a heel. If you want to make Austin this despicable heel that has gone too far, has gone to dark places to get what he wants, fine. I would have still had him stun Vince. You can never make the fans hate Stone Cold Steve Austin. You just can't. So I agree with people saying that ending didn't make any sense. It completely went against, what, years? Years of conflict between him and Vince McMahon. Now, ultimately, Austin would turn back to being a babyface, but yeah, that ending. It really goes to show you how important that championship is to these men and women. Too many people just treat these championships like it's a prop. And I hate it. I love that this story showed you how much Austin wanted that title. He sold his soul for it. And for that very reason, I cannot look at this match and not go, it's one of the greatest of all time. Top 10. I still think about it to this day. That moment, if you saw it, you're still thinking about it. You haven't forgotten about it. You never will. Say what you want about it, whether you love it or you hate it. It's etched in the history of WWE. The greatest main event, for now, when it comes to WrestleMania. It's not in my top 3, but it's definitely a match that you should go back and watch if you haven't. That being said, Let's get to number 3.
Number 3. Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 21.
If you ask me today, who in your opinion, Alyx, is the best in-ring performer to ever walk through a WWE ring? 2 names come to mind: Kurt Angle, Shawn Michaels. Quite frankly, the fact that we got these two inside a ring, I'm surprised it wasn't the main event. Look, I get this was the year for John Cena and Batista. No offense. I think both of them ended up being far bigger superstars than either Kurt or Shawn. For sure. Nothing had a chance of topping this match. As in a match that had no flaws. A match that went bell to bell, some of the best selling, some of the best spots. The only thing it was missing was a championship. These next 2 matches that we'll talk about, just getting ahead of myself here. Yes, one could argue that this match was better than those 2, but those 2 had an impact on the entire history. Not just WrestleMania, but wrestling period. But getting back to this match, Kurt Angle in 2005 was the best wrestler in the world, and everyone knew it. You couldn't tell me there was a better wrestler than him. He was firing on all cylinders, and for some reason, they didn't want to make him a world champion. This was the time to do it. Especially after this feud. It's crazy how this started with Shawn Michaels eliminating Kurt Angle from the Royal Rumble, and Kurt Angle just snapping. He's just going crazy and attacking Shawn. And then throughout the year, they would just be giving each other hell. Kurt Angle doing that segment with Sensational Sherry. Again, Sensational Sherry. Sexy Kurt on SmackDown, remember? Marty Jannetty. Still can't walk. I'm just a sexy Kurt. It was one of my favorite things about that entire run. So the build-up was already hot, but then the match happens. And the big thing about this match, besides the near falls and the selling, just the overall intensity of the match. The way Shawn sold for Kurt. I cannot tell you how long he held that ankle lock on Shawn. Each time I watch it, it feels like he's holding it on for days. Although it was like, what, 5-6 minutes? The longest ankle lock I've ever seen. The way he was able to hold on before tapping out, that was such a beautiful moment. And by the way, if I'm not mistaken, only 2 people have made Shawn Michaels tap out. Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle. That's huge. To make Shawn Michaels tap out at WrestleMania. A guy that's considered to be Mr. WrestleMania. Yeah, this was a big moment for Kurt. This match should have launched Kurt to the main event spot and given him that world championship immediately. And I know it's hard taking the belts off of John Cena or Batista at this time, because they go on to be Hollywood stars. But still, Kurt was hot. He deserved a title run. They gave him one in 2006. I don't know about y'all. It felt a little too late for me when he got the title in 2006. He deserved the title in 2005 when he was at his best, because there was not a better wrestler. There was not one man better than Kurt Angle. It's frustrating going back and watching this match and realizing, God, they just never capitalized on Kurt Angle when he was at his best. I can't say enough about this match. It's one of the greatest of all time, number 3. But it's not the greatest of all time. We go on to the last 2. Let's get to number 2.
Number 2. Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Bret the Hitman Hart at WrestleMania 13.
Man, you know what's funny? Bret Hart. The best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. A man many have called the greatest in-ring technician ever. Despite all of the classics he's had, and I'm talking about classics that span outside of WWE into WCW and other companies. One match stands the test of time. In some eyes, the greatest WrestleMania match ever. And that's his match with Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 13. This match established the greatest superstar ever. That being Stone Cold Steve Austin. That spot where Bret held on that sharpshooter, we see the blood pouring down Austin's face. Iconic moment. That is what people think about when it comes to Stone Cold Steve Austin. That moment right there. He never tapped out. He never gave up. He passed out. This match was bonkers. Again, like the previous matches, not one boring moment. It was no holds barred, submission only, so there were chairs involved. I loved how vicious Bret was in this match. It speaks to who he was at this time, because around this time, wrestling fans were not for the typical baby faces anymore. They were starting to make that shift into the anti-heroes. We see it with NWO and WCW, and we're seeing it here with Stone Cold Steve Austin. Austin was doing his best to be hated, but the more he was attacking all these people, the more the fans loved him. And Bret Hart saw that, and it made him angry. And it led to one of the best heel runs ever with the Hart Foundation. Now, admittedly so, I came into wrestling the next year, in 1998, when all of that didn't happen, but I have gone back and watched it. I'm upset I never got to experience it. He was amazing. Every time he went to Canada, they loved him. But then he came to the USA and he was hated beyond hated. But it started because of this match. Bret went into this match as the babyface and Austin was the heel. When it was all said and done, it was flipped. The pages were turned. Bret came out as the heel and Austin was made the babyface. The entire ordeal was done so well and it happened so organically. And to this day, if you go back and watch it right now, I dare you to find a better match than this. And there's only one that I can see better than that. There's only one match that's worthy of being on this list as the best WrestleMania match of all time. Let's get to it.
In the #1 greatest WrestleMania match is Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania 25.
If I had it my way, this spot would be a tie between Shawn Michaels versus Taker at WrestleMania 25 and then their main event at WrestleMania 26. Because I feel like the main event at 26 is an extension of their match at 25. Ultimately, when it's all said and done, if I had to pick one over the other, it's their match at WrestleMania 25. This is the culmination of 2.5 decades of WrestleMania. When you think about WrestleMania, two names come to mind. The Undertaker, because of the streak, and then the greatest performer to ever do it, Shawn Michaels, Mr. WrestleMania versus the streak. That, my friends, is WrestleMania. And I got to see it live, which I think is crazy because both of them were born here in Texas. Taker born in Houston, and this was at Houston. What a match this was. I still go back and watch it. Even to this day, despite the streak being broken, the way they were able to draw you in simply with the idea that Taker had never beaten Shawn Michaels. In your mind, you instantly thought if anyone was to end the streak, it would be Shawn Michaels. When Shawn Michaels kicked out of that tombstone and you closed in on Taker's face and you hear Jim Ross go, "I'm having an out-of-body experience." You ask anyone right now, what is the greatest WrestleMania match of all time? I guarantee you, 80% of the people would say Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker. The other would say Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Bret Hart. It's one of those two. And you can really go back and forth between those two. I don't care. For me, it's Shawn Michaels versus Taker. The streak created some of the greatest matches to ever happen at a WrestleMania. And the thing is, the WrestleMania streak was done by accident. People don't talk about that. The streak was never supposed to be a thing. It just happened organically. It became one of the pillars of a WrestleMania. And so anyone going up against Taker at this time, they were gonna be put in a big spot. I would dare argue the WrestleMania streak meant more to WWE than the championships. So then you have this feud with Shawn Michaels and Taker, which spans back to what, 1997? To their Hell in a Cell match? Probably before then. So by this point, we're talking over 10 years. I remember their Rumble face-off in 2007 with them at the end and then them at the beginning of 2008. There's little bits and pieces of their feud throughout the history of time. So it's like a culmination of WrestleMania for the last 25 years up to this point. And then you had these two just go out there and kill it. Taker almost killing himself with that dive was... It's scary to me that he even finished the match. That could have gone so wrong. That could have gone incredibly wrong, but he still managed to finish the match. The entrances, I didn't even talk about the entrances. I love we see Shawn Michaels descend from heaven, and then we see Taker ascend from hell. I only wish, and this is the one thing I will say about the match, because the match itself, without question, is the best wrestling match to ever happen at WrestleMania. And the fact that this didn't have the hype that WrestleMania 26 had, that bothers me. That is the only thing I will take away from this match. If the hype from WrestleMania 26 came before the match at WrestleMania 25, everyone would be saying this is the best thing ever. This is it. The creme de la creme, the greatest match of all time. But to me, if that's the only knock on the match, I don't really see that as a knock. I see that as a compliment to how great these two were together. Taker and Shawn Michaels personified WWE. Neither one of them left the company. They stayed loyal to Vince and WWE. And what we got, to me, is a match that will live on in infamy. The greatest WrestleMania match of all time. Nothing yet has come close. Could it happen? Sure. I look forward to seeing the day we get a better match, but it's not today. Number one on my list is Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 25, and it's not even close. All right, that's my top 10 list. Give me your thoughts. What are your top 10 greatest WrestleMania matches down below? Let me know. I'm pretty sure it's different than this list. Maybe it's the same list, but I'm curious to know where your head's at when it comes to the greatest of all time, because we all have different preferences, so we're all gonna perceive wrestling, anything, differently. So I invite you all to share your list down below and give me your thoughts about my list. Other than that, do all the YouTube things. Like the video, subscribe, and click that bell to catch all my content when it comes out. Also follow me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And don't forget to donate, PayPal, Patreon, Cash App, or Venmo. We got a lot more top 10s. I'm very curious to know which one you think is coming next, because there is one coming next. I just won't tell you what it is. Until then, you guys have a good day, and always know you are welcomed right here in Alyx's world. A place that is, was, and forever will be a safe space for wrestling fans like you. Peace.